Ladies and gentlemen, what an exceptional day and what exceptional items we have today here at Zargon. It finally appeared. We got the Bandit Bow, the unique Bandit Bow with assassin damage, crit shots and critical damage at Zargon. And this is so special because it almost took me 3 years to get this item. I just found this item in a random Olympian gift in March this year. So you can only get it from Olympian gifts or when Zargon decides to offer it in his weekly offers, which now finally happened, and this is the first time I can remember that he has this bow on his offers. What makes this so special is it has crit damage on it. Because there are only 4 bows in the game which come with crit damage. You cannot engrave crit damage on bows on your own. And there will be no bow at the blacksmith and when you randomly loot bows that will ever have crit damage. Of course, the bighorn bow will still be the best bow in the game, especially for warrior hunter build. But if you make an assassin only build, the bandit bow has a right to exist. I even put this bow in the top 5 best weapons of all time for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was only beaten by the bighorn bow, by the forged Isu staff, Spartan javelin and Hater's harp. It is really in the top tier of Odyssey weapons. And just to give you a glimpse of what this bow is actually capable of, just take a look at the world record build here with the 1.2 billion damage which I achieved last year. You can actually improve this build when you have the Bandit Bow and make it even hit 1.3 or 1.4 billion damage. So there is some really nice stuff you can do with this bow with the extra crit damage of this bow. In order to get this bow from Zargon, you might have to dismantle existing bandit bows with different engravings in order to buy it, because Zargon always checks if you already own items with the same name, but it doesn't check the engraving. So if you want to buy the unique bandit bow and you have a random crappy bandit bow in your inventory, you have to dismantle your crap bandit bow and get the real unique bandit bow. Then the checkmark disappears and you can finally buy it. I've now attached you the full world record strategy video including the build I've used last year, but please be aware this record got already beaten by Tetracycloid. He got 1.417 billion. He also used the bandit bow and the dark steel mask, but it should give you an impression on how the strategy actually works. If you're not familiar with the world record strategies, it involves to use the rare chance, the 5% chance to deal assassin damage on a melee hit. So that is only applied on every 20th possible hit. And to get the most out of it, you also have to use the highest possible warrior damage attack. And then you get the highest possible assassin damage conversion out of it. Maybe you remember the rarest madness ditch where we got a ton of damage just because we used rarest madness in the main game and not in the DLC. We got up to 50 million damage in a single hit, and I now figured out why that happened. Every time you hit a polemark with some kind of assassin damage conversion, which only is the rarest madness and the assassin damage conversion itself, it deals an incredible amount of damage to the polemark. So the polemarks somehow have a very weak spot. There is a bug that increases their damage when they are hit by converted assassin damage. So this odd behavior on the polemark for rarest madness is also happening when you use a normal assassin damage conversion on polemarks. So for the new strategy we have to look for a nice fort with a polemark next to an oil pot or multiple oil pots, and that's what I found on Naxos. There's a polemark right in front of his tent and there's a big oil pot right next to him and some smaller oil pots nearby. So I just went there, I killed all the other enemies and I used my knockdown arrows to knock down the polemark. I dragged him in a very good position right next to the smaller oil pots, and then I went uphill and made the manual save for it. Make sure you don't forget to change to nighttime for the increased 10% damage when out of combat. The actual strategy now involves that I go downhill, I pick up one of the oil pots, I place myself in a good position next to the polemark, and then I use Battle Cry of Ares, not the Ares Madness. I use a normal Battle Cry that will drop the oil pot immediately, so I get covered in black oil without me having to smash it. And then I use the poisonous attacks and time slow down, and then I perform the overpower attack right on the polemark. And then I pray that I get a crit hit and that the damage conversion really triggers. With 45% crit chance and 5% assassin damage conversion, that will be most likely on every 40th hit when you try the strategy. So that is really not something which you can do on every hit. It is a special build with a low crit chance just designed for getting the world record in that specific situation here we created artificially. That is nothing you can just achieve in normal play during the normal game. That is really an artificially created position here with the polo mark, with the knockdown damage, with the 500% damage from the oil pot. The whole build is just designed for increasing the damage to the maximum possible amount and not to make it convenient or good for daily play. So make sure you also check out one of the other recent builds from the channel. Before we check out the gear, I have to clear up some myths which are around here for the assassin damage conversion. You do not have to use armor penetration. Armor penetration only helps your hunter and warrior damage, so do not use it when you go here for the world record or for any assassin damage conversion type of build. Armor penetration will not increase your assassin damage even though it is converted to our warrior tech. The other myth is about poison and the poison weakening effect. There is actually no real poison weakening effect. When enemies are lying on the ground, when they are knocked out, you cannot poison them and therefore you can also not weaken them any further. So you do not have to use anything here to poison your enemies. What we do use here the poison damage for is that every percent of poison damage will be converted to a percent of assassin damage, and the same applies for any percent of overpower damage or any percent against Spartans or Athenians. All these percentages will be treated 1-to-1 and converted into our assassin damage. So we can increase our assassin damage by using a lot of poison. You can also do it with fire instead. And you can increase your assassin damage by using damage to Athenians or Spartans. That is used here in the most effective way in this build. A third myth is that you do not have to use any kind of damage with your weapon type. Damage with your weapon type only amplifies your warrior damage. It will not amplify your assassin damage or your converted assassin damage in any kind of way. As you can see, we have only 550,000 assassin damage because investing into critical damage is much more important here for the damage record than going for another 20% on the 4th position for all of these engravings. So we invest a lot of special engravings. We also decrease our crit chance intentionally to add more damage, more critical damage and special engravings to it. The overpower animation cancels shown in the video can only be done with daggers or sword. So when you want to deal your damage on enemies lying on the ground, on a staircase or on animals in a single attack, in a single strike, then you have to go with a sword or with a dagger here. I had a dagger here with assassin damage, critical damage, poison damage, and then I engraved another 50% crit damage but minus 10% crit chance. Since we don't care about the crit chance in this build, we will still have 45%, which is quite okay. So having another 50% crit damage here is actually better than 20% assassin damage or 30% all damage. So we go for more damage wherever possible and sacrifice our crit chance for it. An alternative engraving for the poison damage could also be damage versus Athenians or Spartans. And of course the whole build can also be done with a fire build. Fire engravings are on different positions than poison engravings. So if you don't have the dark steel mask, a fire build with fire on your helmet may actually be a very good option. The same, by the way, also applies for damage versus Spartans and damage versus Athenians. These engravings can be placed on different positions. So depending on what items you actually possess, if you have the Bandit Bow, if you have the Dark Steel Mask, you can modify your build either using damage versus Spartans, Athenians or fire or poison, the one which fits best together. But other than for the assassin damage conversion, I would not recommend to use any damage versus any enemy groups because they are rather not so powerful, they are not processed by damage with your weapon type, so are not amplified that much. So rather not use damage versus any enemy types when you are not going for the world record. Then of course we use the Minotaur Mace with assassin damage, 100% crit damage while full health and another 50% crit damage. The Minotaur Mace is the only melee weapon with 100% critical damage at full health and it can only be obtained from the fake Minotaur questline in Pevka. There's no way to obtain the Minotaur Mace from a blacksmith. If you don't have it, then you may have to restart a New Game Plus, then you can collect all these unique weapons again. On our bow we have assassin damage, 40% poison damage, 10% all damage, and we engrave 100% damage but health capped to 25%. There would be an even better bow with 20% on overpower attacks instead of the 10% all damage, and if you have it, then you can also use the Bandit Bow, which has assassin damage and 50% crit damage. So that would be the ideal bow for the world record. It can only be acquired via Olympian gifts, and so it is very rare to get. Sadly I don't have this item, so I have to use a normal epic bow instead. But for the headgear I am lucky because I own the Dark Steel Mask. The Dark Steel Mask is the only helmet in the game with 100% critical damage while full health. So it has Hunter damage, which is a bit of a setback, but it has 100% crit damage, 10% all damage, and we can engrave it with another 50% critical damage. So basically we get another 100% critical damage for free just because we have the Dark Steel Mask. If you don't have the Dark Steel Mask, you could go for a helmet with assassin damage and fire damage and critical damage instead, then you would rather want to make a fire build. On the gloves we go for assassin damage, 100% critical damage while full health, another 50% crit damage, and then we engrave a special legendary engraving which gives us 50% crit damage with warrior abilities. That actually works with our overpower attack because overpower is a warrior ability and it triggers the 50% crit damage even if we convert our assassin damage to it. Then on the belt we have assassin damage, 40% poison damage, 100% critical damage while full health, and we engrave another 5% crit chance and 25% crit damage while full health. The torso has assassin damage, 50% crit damage, another 40% poison damage, and we engrave 500% while covered in black oil. That gives us a really huge damage bonus, but only for around 5 seconds. Then on the boots we have assassin damage, 20% crit chance while full health, 100% crit damage while full health, and we engrave 40% damage on Spartan soldiers. 40% on Spartan soldiers here is actually better than 20% assassin damage. Then in our stats we see that we have 347% assassin damage, we have 80% damage versus Spartans because we also upgraded our mastery ability for it. And then we have 1000%, exactly 1000% critical damage while full health, plus the 50% from the warrior ability, which we don't have to forget, and we have 45% critical chance. That is really good when we try the world record. We could actually remove the 20% critical chance at full health from the boots and replace it with 50% damage when in contact with water. So that would give you another 50% damage, but that would really drop the critical chance low to 25% and would require a lot more attempts for you to get the damage. We also have 205% poison damage. That is really good because it is converted 1-to-1 to our assassin damage, like the Spartan damage. Everything counts a 1-to-1 to our assassin damage. The crit factor is actually then the multiplier, so we have a multiplier of over 1000%. I used a total of 64 abilities on the abilities itself and 280 on all the masteries. That's around the number you have to have when you want to have every possible perk you need. For your record attempts, it is really vital that you unlock your paralyzing arrows to knock down all your enemies. All the other hunter abilities and shot types are really only needed when you want to clear the forts. Archery Master only gives you a little bit of adrenaline. What is really important is the overpower attacks, of course, the battle cry, the normal battle cry, not the rarest. And then you go for Weapons Master for additional crit chance. Of course you can also pick up a couple of more warrior abilities for clearing the fort as well. Then Shadow Assassin, 40% assassin damage, 50% crit damage, absolutely mandatory here. Then we go for the Venomous attacks, 3 points here that you can just activate it, and Poison Mastery, which gives you 25% poison damage. If you want to go for Fire instead, then you have to use the Flaming Attack and Fire Mastery instead. Also mandatory is Slow Time for the 10% damage whenever time is slowed down, and Stealth Master for the 10% damage when out of combat overnight. In the masteries we go for only what is really needed here for the world record, so every perk maxed out that is needed. The 5% crit chance here, 20 points on that, 25% crit damage, also 20 points on that, and then nothing else here on the Hunter tab. In the Warrior tab then we go for 10% damage with overpower abilities, 40% damage on Spartan soldiers. Of course if you want to go for the Athenian version you can also go for 40% versus Athenians, then 5% damage with warrior abilities, and that's it here for the Warrior tab. In the Assassin tab, as mentioned, we use slow time, so we go for 10% damage whenever time is slowed down. We use 20% assassin damage of course, then 10% crit chance because we really need it, then 50% crit damage while full health, damage while full health, poison damage, damage on elites and bosses, and of course the most important here, 5% chance to deal 25% assassin damage on a melee hit. That is important, that is giving us the assassin damage conversion and what makes this world record even possible. Then last but not least, you can still add a little bonus here on damage when attacking from behind, and that's it for the abilities. You don't need any more than that to beat the world record. By the way, it most likely got already beaten when you watch the video, because people will go for it and just beat it, but that's the video here. I give you the strat, you can get the record now, so just enjoy it. If you want to support my channel, then check out the join button for exclusive memberships perks. Check out the Discord server and don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.